I was a high school teacher for around 7 years before I moved into a role in the social work space, teaching full-time, working with large classes, managing behaviour, planning lessons, doing everything that comes with being in a school day-to-day. Then I stepped into a very different role. I became a school specialist working one-to-one with young people in foster care who had experienced significant trauma in their upbringing. My job was to help them re-engage with school and improve literacy and numeracy. And I remember thinking, honestly, this is going to be easier. Going from 25 kids in a class to working one-to-one. Fewer distractions, more time, more focus. I thought it would be a breeze. I was incredibly wrong. What I didn't understand at the time was that when you work with young people who have experienced deep and ongoing trauma, you are not just teaching content. You are working with their nervous system. You are working with their sense of safety. You are working with years of learned survival responses that have kept them alive. The way students with heavy trauma respond is completely different. How you talk matters. Your tone matters. Where you sit or stand matters. How quickly you move matters. Even your facial expressions. I had to learn how they think, how their brain has adapted to danger, and what they have been through before I could even begin to help them learn. There were moments where I would say something completely neutral and watch a student shut down, lash out, or walk out of the room. Not because they were being difficult, but because their brain interpreted something as a threat. That was confronting, and it forced me to realize something important. I needed to change before I expected them to. Once I stepped back and started learning from trauma research, everything began to make sense. Researchers like Bruce Perry have shown that repeated trauma wires the brain for survival, not learning. When a young person grows up in chronic stress, the brain becomes incredibly good at detecting danger, but much less efficient at things like focus, memory, impulse control, and emotional regulation. Bessel van der Kolk's work helped me understand this on a deeper level. Trauma is not just a story someone tells, it lives in the body. A traumatized student is often in fight, flight, or freeze before they even know why. That means what we often label as poor behaviour or lack of motivation is actually a nervous system doing exactly what it learned to do to survive. So the first and most important solution is this. Regulation comes before education. Always. If a student is dysregulated, learning is not the priority. Safety is. That means before asking for work, compliance, or engagement, we focus on helping their nervous system settle. Slowing the pace, reducing pressure, sometimes doing less, not more. Another massive shift for me was how I viewed behaviour. Trauma-informed research reframes behaviour as communication. Behaviour is not the problem, it is the signal. It tells us when a student feels unsafe, overwhelmed, out of control, or unseen. Punishment, especially for traumatised young people, often reinforces the very behaviours we are trying to reduce. It confirms their belief that adults are unpredictable or unsafe. One thing my old boss used to say all the time really stuck with me. Praise as many behaviours as you can and ignore negative ones wherever possible. And in that role, during one-to-one sessions, that mindset was incredibly powerful. These kids are so used to getting attention only when they do something wrong, being told off, being corrected, being removed. That's where the interaction lives for them. So their brain learns, if I want attention, even negative attention, this is how I get it. So instead we flipped it. We actively looked for anything we could positively reinforce. Sitting down, coming back to the room, answering one question, using words instead of actions, even just staying nearby. The smallest things. And I want to share one story that really changed how I approached this work. I took a young person out to the local library for a session. We had tasks planned for the day, but he wasn't interested at all. At one point, he decided to abscond and walked away from me completely inside the library. Now, every instinct tells you to chase, to correct, to call it out. But I knew for this kid, that would turn into a power struggle, and more importantly, it would turn into attention for the behaviour. So instead of chasing him, I stayed calm and said from a distance, loud enough for him to hear but without urgency, "I'll wait by the entrance whenever you're ready." And I waited. He took a long time. I had no idea how long it would be. But eventually he came back to the entrance. I didn't lecture him. I didn't bring up what had happened. I didn't remind him of the rules. All I said was, "Thanks for coming back. You're making great decisions today." And then I immediately changed the topic. I started chatting about his favourite games and shows. Completely unrelated. The reason I did that was simple. This kid was so used to being noticed only when he did something wrong. I wanted to flip the script. I wanted him to experience attention and connection when he did something right, even if that right thing was simply coming back. And honestly, it was kind of funny at first. He was visibly uncomfortable with praise. He didn't know what to do with it. That told me everything. Praise was unfamiliar, but over time, he started to lean into it. For that young person, the combination of consistent expectations, clear boundaries, and an intentional focus on positive reinforcement changed everything. Within 6 to 8 months, he was a completely different kid. Not because we lowered expectations, not because there were no rules, but because he knew exactly where the boundaries were, and he knew that negative behavior would not get him the attention he was used to getting, while positive behavior absolutely would. Obviously within reason. You can't ignore unsafe behavior or let walls get broken. Safety always comes first. But so much behavior doesn't need fuel. It needs redirection. That experience lined up perfectly with what the research shows. Trauma strips young people of control and agency. Positive reinforcement gives it back. It teaches the brain that safe behavior leads to connection, not punishment. Predictability plays a huge role here too. Trauma thrives in chaos. Healing thrives in consistency. Clear routines, clear expectations, clear follow-through. Not harsh, not emotional, just consistent. Choice is another powerful tool. Trauma removes choice. Even small choices help restore it. Where to sit, which task to start with, pen or laptop. These choices communicate safety and respect. Physical positioning matters more than people realise. Sitting side by side rather than face to face. Giving space. Staying at eye level. These things reduce perceived threat and keep the nervous system calmer. Movement is also critical. Trauma lives in the body, so regulation must involve the body. Walking while talking, stretching, short breaks. These are not distractions, they are strategies. And then there is co-regulation. Traumatised young people often cannot regulate on their own yet. They borrow regulation from calm adults. Your tone, your pace, your breathing. Your ability to stay steady teaches them how to do the same over time. One of the hardest lessons I had to learn was patience. Trauma recovery does not respond well to urgency. The more rushed I became, the more dysregulated the student became. Slowing down was not weakness, it was strategy. Progress also had to be redefined. Progress might be staying in the room, or attempting one question, or coming back the next day. Those moments matter more than they look like on paper. Working with young people who have experienced trauma taught me that learning is not linear, and that healing and learning happen together, not separately. The most important thing I learned is this. These kids are not broken. Their brains adapted to survive. Our role is not to fix them, but to create environments where their nervous system can finally feel safe enough to rest. If you are a teacher, tutor, or parent working with a child who has experienced trauma, remember this. What looks like defiance is often fear. What looks like disengagement is often overwhelm. And what looks like resistance is often protection. You do not need to be perfect. You need to be regulated. You need to be consistent. And you need to notice the good even when it feels small. When we lead with understanding, evidence, and compassion, we do more than teach skills. We give young people something they may have never had before. Safety, consistency, and genuine recognition for doing the right thing. And from there, everything else becomes possible. Thanks for watching. By the way, our Turobot app makes worksheets in seconds. Any subject, any age. If that helps, the link's below. And we'd appreciate a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. See you in the next one.